Nobody's.
As a easy, we're going to pick on. They did rule last year. I didn't know.
Ready? Everybody ready to get started? Welcome to this March the 29th at 9:01 a.m. We're going to call this meeting to order, and we're going to go in a closed session for a while. So if you could read the stuff that's in the closed session, Council, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely, Chairman. Thank you. There are 4 items for your closed session this morning. There are 2 existing litigations under Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D1. The cases are named Madera Irrigation District versus the Madera County Groundwater Sustainability Agency with additional parties. That's under Madera County Superior Court case number MCV 086277. The other case is Elizabeth Cardoza with other listed plaintiff versus the Madera County Groundwater Sustainability Agency. The case number is MCV 086218. You have conference with your labor negotiators. Your designated representatives are your CAO, Jay Varney, and your Director of Human Resources, Alba Gomez. The unrepresented employee is the Water and Natural Resources Director. There's also, under Government Code Section 54957, the Public Employee Appointment Employment, and the titles for those positions are Directors of Water and Natural Resources and Human Resources. Excuse me. Water and Natural Resources and Human Resources. No, that's right. Yeah, I stand corrected. Thank you.
Any public comment? Don't anybody raise your hand first. Okay, let's go to closed session. He's going to jump on us. USA reports.
Item 8395, presentation and request to provide direction to finalize Madera County Groundwater Sustainability Agency's rate study.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Stephanie and Agneson, your Director of Water and Natural Resources. I am joined on the WebEx portal by the team from Raftellus, Kevin Kostick, Jim Armstrong, and Nancy Fan. And Duncan McEwen, economist from ERA, is also going to join and is sharing a couple of slides to address the economic implications of SGMA and what we showed in the GSPs. Okay, I'm ready to share the presentation. Thank you. So let's review what we've done. As you know, we've developed 3 groundwater sustainability plans with projects and management actions that took place in 2018 and 2019. We turned them in January of 2020. The GSPs were all adopted by the board and include recharge projects, participation in sites reservoir, domestic well mitigation, and land repurposing. They are all in some state pending approval from DWR. The ones in Chowchilla and the Delta Mendota are currently being revised based on a letter from DWR. We've done extensive public outreach to develop an allocation and key project details in order to develop costs. We developed with the advisory committee a farm unit concept that's incorporated in our resolutions for allocations that allows people to manage water as a larger economic unit rather than by the acre, which is the most economically harmful method. And we've been aggressive about water supply augmentation. We have heard everything people have said is get us water, bring in as much water as you can, please help us do recharge. And we have shown that in the GSPs ahead of demand reduction, although we do include a demand reduction component simply because the math is there for it. What we've heard from your board is that you understand the necessity of a fixed rate for years 1 and 2 and would like to consider fixed rates for all of the 5 years. We understand that the board would like to talk about economic impacts. We heard from the public last time that they were concerned about being the first to implement Sigma, and I just want to reassure folks, we are not the first to implement Sigma. We are not particularly ahead. We may be in the first wave, but we're not first. And if you want to look south to Tulare, the Tule Subbasin, the Kauai GSAs, those are places where there are groundwater allocations, there are pumping caps, and there are rates. One key about being in the first wave in the valley is that our early implementation ensures that we can participate in sites and recharge, which are those aggressive water supply augmentation projects we talked about. So delays may take those off the table. And we talked last time about there really being 2 knobs to turn. There's a water supply augmentation knob and there's a demand reduction knob. And you want to have the ability to turn both knobs. We also heard last time that the board would like the carryover provisions from the resolution from August of last year emphasized. So we do have the ability built in to the allocation to carry over unused allocation from year to year. Right now, the resolution reads that you need to request it. We could certainly implement something where it's automatically carried over. It does need to be paid for, though, in the year it occurs. So that's kind of background information. What we're requesting today, we have before you a final rate proposal. As the policymakers, we would like you to give the go-ahead to Raftellus to finalize the rate proposal and bring it back as a complete rate study April 12th. Then we request rate authorization that you would see a final rate study and we would begin the noticing process. And then June 21st, which would allow for 45 days notice, there would be a public hearing on the rate adoption. And absent a majority protest, the board may then adopt the rates as noticed. So the board doesn't adopt the rates until the public weighs in, the public being those who are affected by the rates, those who would be assessed a fee. So I now have 3 slides of economic analysis, and Duncan McEwen was going to do these slides, so he may need to be unmuted on WebEx.
Okay, good morning. Stephanie, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, members of the board. This is Duncan McEwen with ERA Economics. And I think what we heard at the meeting last week was some requests to discuss some of the economic implications associated with GSP development and implementation. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that since that's work that we had done to support GSP development previously. So just going, taking a step back, looking a few years ago at development of the GSP, as Stephanie mentioned earlier, the projects and management actions that were developed and included were laid out to help minimize economic impacts to the Madera County economy. Agriculture is critically important to the local economy down there, as it is for most areas affected by Sigma. The analysis that we put together for the GSP showed that upwards of 50% of local economic activity is either directly or indirectly related to agriculture. So the GSP implementation plan looked at ways to maximize water development of new water supplies, recharge, and other water supplies before looking to demand management options to effectively balance the books to make up that last increment, that last deficit. And so that's what was done and laid out in the GSP. So we do have some information that we can rely on from existing analyses. There's two in particular. One, some of the economic impact analysis for the GSPs, and then second analysis looking more kind of in the accounting examples for what the effects of rates would be. And actually, Raftellus has presented on this at earlier meetings as well. So if you can go to the next slide, Stephanie. So there's actually three analyses that are currently available in the GSPs, three different economic analyses, and those are referenced here on this slide. So it's Appendix 3C and D in the Madera Subbasin, and then Appendix 3C in the Chowchilla Subbasin. So those looked at two things. One was the economic impact of accelerating the demand management program that's planned as part of the GSP implementation plan. And the second analysis looked at, what if demand management was implemented immediately to balance extraction and recharge, and then prior to implementation of projects. And so in the Madera Subbasin, more immediate implementation of demand management would result in economic impacts for the county that are, north of $180 million per year, with substantial fallowing and substantial impacts for local jobs, businesses, and income. So that was used to inform the implementation plan. So to have projects that are phased and implemented over the 20-year period, and then a gradual implementation of demand management with maximum flexibility to allow adjustments to minimize those types of potential economic impacts. So I think that was the first thing we wanted to come back with, is just the information that's available in the GSP from analyses that we had previously prepared. I think the second point that comes out of that is that this analysis was developed under the assumption that the GSP projects for recharge and additional water imports from sites would be completed as planned in the GSP. So to the extent that those are limited, the demand management alternative would increase. You would expect these types of economic impacts would increase in that situation. If you go to the next slide, please. And then last thing, and as I mentioned, Kevin from Raftellus has talked about this on previous meetings, and more of an accounting example to look at what are the kind of the fiscal effects of implementation of rates on a typical farm unit. So I think previously we presented an example for a hypothetical 100-acre farm unit. But just boiling it down and thinking about it on a per acre basis, we went back and looked at kind of typical net returns. And when we're thinking about net returns here, we mean net over variable costs, so over operating costs, and how those vary over time. And obviously those vary by crop type and mix and productivity of the land, with typically lower return activities being some of the annual field crops for grain and forage, and some of the higher valued activities being the nut crops, permanent vineyards, and so forth. And those returns vary over time. Obviously, almond prices aren't what they were 6 years ago. So if you look back over a period of 10 years, you can see you see the variability of the net returns. Kind of a ballpark range would be in the order of $350 to $2,000 per acre net return. So the rate study fees are obviously less than that, around $200 per acre per year. But I think an important consideration is that it doesn't address this variability over time, as I mentioned. So market conditions change, and that affects that returns per acre. The other options that are available as part of the flexibility for GSP implementation are the SALT program, so payments for land repurposing that are included in the plan, projects, and management actions for the GSP and included in the rate study. And then the way to avoid fees would be to not enroll acres for sustainable yield and transitional water. So those are the two primary options available, in addition to the other flexibility considerations for use of allocation under those programs. So I just wanted to briefly talk about those existing studies that were available. And with that, I'll stop and hand it back over to Stephanie or take any questions.
Thank you, Duncan. So what we're showing on the screen here are 5-year rate schedules in dollars per enrolled acre. These are the rates that are fixed in that they do not have a volumetric component. They do go up over time. They have an increasing slope, which reflects costs increasing over time.
No.
So in the Madera subbasin, we are looking at rates that start at $184, and then in the fiscal year ending 2027, they are up to $329. In Chowchilla, starting at $190, and in the fiscal year ending 2027 at $218. And the Delta Mendota, we've talked about this. These rates are the ones that only include land repurposing. They start at $92 and then go up to $202. Your board also wanted to talk through penalties and replacement water charges for exceeding the allocation. So on the right, we have a replacement water charge. So for every acre foot that someone goes over the allocation, we will have to get someone else to forgo pumping. And that is estimated at $600 to $650 per acre foot over the allocation. That replacement water charge is going in the rate study. Sigma also allows a penalty, which can be adopted by ordinance, and the penalty is up to $500 per acre foot over the allocation. Your board has some discretion in terms of how that is phased in. For example, in year 1, you could simply use the replacement water charge, and then in year 2, you could start adding part of the penalty to it. So replacement water plus $100 of penalty. Year 3, you could add replacement water plus $200 or $300. So there is the potential for phasing in these, because I understand I understand they are both necessary and they are a big change. So I can come back with a draft ordinance later in April or in May that shows you some of that, and I would be happy to get any feedback on that as well. So we do want to show you a little bit of the future without the county GSA rates. So if we are unable to fund implementing the GSPs, that means we are not able to bring in new water, both from sites and water for recharge with 215 or other water purchases. This would mean we don't have help for domestic wells that go dry, and it would mean we cannot fund repurposing land. So this is important to get this done. The failure of compliance with the GSP potentially means additional lawsuits. The state could intervene. We have been extremely successful with grant funds right now, and the state has shared state resources with us. If we are not able to show a local cost share, I anticipate they would be much less generous in the future. And of course, if we are not able to fund the projects, we may have to look at worse allocations. So there's some very significant consequences of not having rates to pay for projects in the adopted GSPs. I just want to note, since we all like to get into the weeds, that in terms of project development, just because rates are approved does not commit the board to implement. They would all of these projects have to come back to the board for individual actions, whether it's adopting rules for land repurposing or SALC, or rules for domestic well mitigation in partnership with others in our subbasin, whether it's sites participation, or how we look at recharge projects in terms of sharing costs and benefits with growers as they do on-farm recharge and we bring in water. The authorization of the rate proposal allows project development to move forward, and we can develop project details in public and with your board on all of those. Just want to note that the proposed rates are maximums. We anticipate, and we could write into the rate study, annual financial updates to the board with the ability to adjust the rates downward if the projects do not progress as we're currently anticipating them, or if there are other revenues that are larger than current estimates. Obviously things change as we move ahead, so we think a yearly check-in to do that and to look at the rates is fiscally wise. And then if that occurs, the board can elect rates lower than those adopted without having to renotice and re-adopt. So looking through the schedule, I know we've been at this a while. The planning studies have been in the works over a year. We did come to the board in December showing you some rates. Water allocations are in effect as of January. We showed a different presentation with some options for rates in February. We had a public workshop as well with 99 folks, February 25th. And I think this is the third presentation of the month, odd rates. We've also had a number of meetings, like small group meetings with people so they could really dig in and ask all of the questions that they wanted to. And I'd like to continue doing that sort of outreach as well as have another public workshop. And then moving ahead, if we can choose a rate structure today, final authorization to move ahead with noticing parcels. The trigger for that would be the meeting April 12th. The public noticing would begin around the beginning of May. There's the 45-day protest period, and then public hearing for rate adoption is June 21st with the rates in effect, essentially July 1. So our staff recommendation is to direct Raftellus to document the rate study as presented, which is 5 years of gradually increasing rates per enrolled acre without a volumetric component, and to include an annual review of financial needs for each subbasin. I don't think I said it explicitly this time, but these are all managed in separate accounts by subbasin. If we can do that today, that would allow us to draft the public notices to come up with clear language. We would also take direction to do additional outreach and then consider authorization of the notices to affected parcels at our next time together, April 12th. That concludes my presentation. I would be glad to take your questions.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Rogers,
Yes, I have about 4 or 5 questions for you.
one at a time.
Yeah, I'll just bang on them here as we can. One is in the economic analysis. I saw that 200 million, is that per year in potential economic loss? Can you go back to that?
Yes, I think that's slide 6. Duncan, can you speak to that? That's the second big bullet, result in the economy contracting by 200 million.
Is that per year?
Yes, that's an annual impact, yes.
Man.
And emphasizing that's the result of immediate demand reduction, right?
Okay.
We are phasing in demand
Right,
reduction. So we are avoiding that.
Yeah, I think in one industry alone, I'm just going to add this in a thought that if you consider dairies by themselves, if this results, if what we do results in the loss of the dairy industry in Madera County, you're looking at 600 million in 1 year. So that would be, that's a huge, huge hit if you lose the dairy industry. And 2,000 jobs, you're talking ancillary hits as well. So that's just a thought there. Anyway, I noticed also 40,000 acres per year fallowed per year.
So what that slide looks at is the immediate implementation of
Right.
SGMA, which would require in the Madera subbasin 40,000 acres.
And leveling
fallowed.
off to what?
That's immediate full implementation, so it doesn't level off
That's complete then.
in the Madera Basin.
Okay,
yes.
that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Yes, but again, we are avoiding those consequences
Right,
with a
by
glide
tapering.
path.
I'm just looking at down the telescope. I'm looking down a few years. Have we provided adequate, and will we provide adequate flexibility in our use of the monetary funds from the fees for opportunities that are not listed in the GSP? If we have the opportunity to, say, purchase water that we didn't see on the radar, do we have adequate flexibility in the plan to be able to go after that water? We're talking real solution here. And we want to make sure that we have that flexibility built in. However, we don't want it so flexible that it can be misused in any way. Opportunity presents. Your thoughts?
So there is the ability to purchase water for recharge, which is already included in the budget. All of those decisions would come to your board. So we would do some financial calculations, look at what money we had on hand, and then bring that to your board for direction.
Okay. And I know that on concerning sites, we're number 5 on the list of potential purchasers of water. That's, what, 20% chance? Or what is the chance? Is it better than 20%?
So I think, yes, it is.
Okay.
So sites participation is currently full. They go through a process called rebalancing every couple of years where some people leave and some people come in. They are about to rebalance again. That would be a board decision for us.
Okay.
But not everybody is asking for 10,000 acre feet. So
Okay.
we're asking for the highest amount at number 5. Everybody ahead of us is asking for smaller amounts.
Okay.
So I think we have a good chance of getting in.
Okay. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
In the event that we don't get in, there's going to be a reduction in the fee or a new direction in the plan.
So if we were unable to participate in sites, I would bring that to you as the board, and we would have a discussion about the options, and certainly reducing the rates is one of those options.
Okay. So we are ramping the fees. I know that we're ramping them. They're starting out at a certain rate and they're ramping up. Is there a way to potentially start even a little bit lower with the idea that we're focused on sites, we're focused on recharge, real water and recharge? With we currently have self-help enterprises on well mitigation, and we have the opportunity to possibly enter into long-term contract with lands for repurposing over a period of time, with the potential of entering into that contract with a bigger sum payment, say 2, 3, 4 years out or 5 years out. In other words, start out with a much lower amount, and then and with the idea that when we enter into this contractual arrangement with this person who owns the land to repurpose it, that they get more later on. They get a bigger chunk later on, not at first, but later on as a result of the lower fees. So those are 2 things or 3 things that I thought of that would possibly help us to lessen the pain of the first few years. That's what I'm looking at.
Well, I think lowering the rates is going to create some cash flow issues. It would also potentially slow project implementation. And while self-help is currently directed by the state board to provide emergency water, We've received extremely clear direction from DWR that this is a temporary measure and that we
Right.
need to step in almost immediately.
Right, I would say it's temporary, but I would keep it temporary, but I'm thinking of the first 2 years here, first few years. We're not going to have the ability to just all of a sudden, boom, take this on. We're going to have to decide how we're going to take it on, and we have to have the funds to take it on. So that's going to come slowly. And again, if we throw the baby out with the bathwater, you're not going to have any of this. So that's my concern, is making sure that we're not overdoing it, ramping up slow enough those first few years that we're taking a little caution, a little bit of caution.
Well, we are showing you the rates that start lower, right?
Okay, yeah,
The other thing I would add on self-help is they're really providing emergency water services, right,
Right.
for tank delivery.
Right.
And what our program looks at is the potential
actual
for,
well replacement.
that's right, replacing wells. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Supervisor Frazier.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have two questions. This is a 5-year rate. We then have to bring it back for another 218 if it is to go up, correct?
That's right.
And it can be changed from fixed to volumetric
That's right.
if it need be at that time.
Yes.
I guess that was two parts of one question. And then, so if it doesn't pass, and on page 10, we're unable to implement the GSPs, no new water, no recharge. So without the ability to do those projects or any water or new recharge, what would that do to our glide path? Right? Because because a big portion of where our glide path goes is the assumption of those projects. What happens in that event? I would imagine it would be steeper.
Your board could certainly make the allocation steeper. And
Wouldn't it have to be if?
well, your allocation approach right now goes downward from 113,000 to 0, stepping down 2% a year for 5 years and then 6% a year for 15 years. So it will get to 0 on the glide path it's on. I would say that there will be considerable pressure to revise the allocation.
Okay, thank you. Those were my questions.
Supervisor Poitras.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stephanie, I believe that there is a 5-year rate schedule that shows a flat rate option.
There is in my backup slides.
Okay, very good.
Would
So, well,
you
that's,
like me to show that?
well, if you want to, I was just gonna, it's in, my packet here, so I just wanted to discuss it a little bit. Excuse me. You know, I look at the rates, the ones that are presented, and you start out lower and you go higher. But to me, that's counterintuitive, because your ability to produce revenue on that land that you're being charged per acre is actually dropping as you're taking acres out. So as economic productive opportunities drop, the fees are being increased. So I know that I asked you to put together a fixed rate schedule that would mean essentially it would raise the same amount of money as the increasing rate schedule, but it would be more in line with the production and economic return on theoretically on an individual parcel. There's a lot of things that enter into it, commodity prices, of course, and et cetera, et cetera. But then also there's a grower is going to know for that period of time what, at least for that 5 years, what the rate's going to be during that period of time. So there's certainty. There's no like, okay, what's it going to be this year? What's it going to be next year? To me, it's better for planning, and it tracks better the loss of economic return on that particular parcel. Now, I know that there was a discussion, well, on an increasing rate, then the last year, or whatever it is, $320 or something, then it's closer to probably what 2028 might be. But we're going from $0 to $246 per acre, and that's a huge increase. So I don't think another $100 per acre is going to have the shock value as $0 to $246 has. So that's the reason I would support going this direction, not only because of to me, again, it's more in line with what makes sense, but, I'm there, I'm in the ball game, and for me, it would be better for planning.
This smooth one?
The smooth one.
So you do like that
makes
page
sense.
18 better one?
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
That's what I thought you
just
meant,
taking
but I
an
want to make sure
average.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just takes out the variability. It's what's there each year for the next 5 years, and you're not going to again have that first year, hey, 180 or whatever it is, but then by the end it's in yet
29.
the economic.
That makes a lot of sense
Return.
because there is a decrease in the economic power at that point.
So that's the reason I would support the fixed rate. There you go. Thank you.
Okay, Letty, you got anything? Okay, I got one on page 12. The last bullet point, if financially prudent, the board may elect to implement rates lower than those adopted without having to renotice or readopt. Say 2 years down the road, we do lower them without have to renotice. What happens the next year, we have to raise them again. Would we have to renotice or readopt?
Oh,
long as
that's a
it
good
doesn't-
question.
As long as it
Kevin?
doesn't go over the adopted rate that we did. So if it was smooth to 246, we couldn't go to 250. But if it went back up to 246.
Say we went down to 200 and we wanted to go back to that whatever it was.
46.
Once we can go back to 246.
Yeah.
That is how I understand it, but Kevin, can you confirm that, please?
Yeah, that's correct. Supervisor Frazier, you have that correct. That whatever's noticed in that given year will always be the maximum that can be implemented.
So, and you wouldn't have to go back to the public to do a vote or nothing?
No.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought that, but I wanted to make sure because we don't know what those numbers are going to be down the line.
We
so.
don't.
And if it does happen, we want to be able to say we're covered without trying to do this all over again. Okay, anybody else from the board? Being none, we're going to open it up to the public. And so when you come up, there's a sign-in signature. If you put your name and address or whatever it is you do, and you can sign after you spoke. That would make it easier. Thank you again for everybody coming here. Good morning.
All right. Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Rob Deepersloot, and I'm a dairy farmer here in Madera County. And today, I'm representing all the dairy farms in Madera County, and collectively, we represent nearly 20 separate dairy farming operations here in the Madera County GSA. Our dairies comprise of thousands of acres, and we proudly live and work in Madera County and directly employ thousands of its residents. We generate an estimated $600 million annually in productive economic activity. Collectively, we pay millions of dollars in local and state taxes and support Madera County, its services, and schools. We have been watching with concern with the development of the Madera County GSP and the recent rate study, which will inform the GSA on rates, schedules, and penalties. Our specific concern is that the fee and penalty structure in the proposed rate study combined with unrelated regulatory requirements imposed on us by the state's nutrient management program will put the dairies in this GSA's jurisdiction out of business. Currently, our dairies grow feed crops, which utilizes the nitrogen produced by our cows' waste, prevents it from impairing groundwater quality. This practice allows us to both meet the state's nutrient management requirements and to produce the required feed to sustainably operate our business. The proposed GSP's sudden imposition of rigid penalties for the overuse of water, penalties which are assessed right away and year after year, would immediately make growing feed crops cost prohibitive for dairies. We would have to find immediate external solutions for managing our nitrogen and for procuring feed for our business, the combination of which could prove devastating to the continuation of our business. What we need is time so that alternative nutrient management technologies can be identified, financed, and implemented, as well as alternative feed sources identified along with additional surface water supplies to enable continued utilization of our farming acreage, albeit at a lower level. We are also concerned that the rigid fee and penalty structure does not properly consider the unpredictability of weather. We ask that any new tax or regulation on businesses for their water use should consider that weather and rainfall are unpredictable on a year-to-year basis. We are working closely with Stephanie Agnosin, the Director of Water and Natural Resources, to build out infrastructure for our dairies to efficiently capture water during the wet seasons, which means we can be in a very different place in a few years. Penalties that are assessed on year 1 for water overusage may be offset by water captured in year 2 or 3 with better infrastructure, for example. With these concerns in mind, we respectfully request that this board consider the following actions as it moves forward with this groundwater sustainability plan. Number 1, we'd like yearly accounting within the GSA so that all money going in and going out is recorded. We'd like to request an annual review of budget to determine fees and penalties, which Stephanie mentioned today. We'd like the penalties to be suspended for the first year and then stepped up over a 5-year period. We'd like the option to pay annual penalties on a biannual basis, and penalties to be looked at within a 3-year rolling average, allowing farmers to adjust their usage before paying the penalties. And we'd like annual individual appointments with the county to discuss water allocations and usages. And we'd like the allowing of all farms that cross sub-basin boundaries to have one farm unit, including both sub-basins. And then we request a commitment from the county to assist in obtaining grants to help finance alternative nutrient management technologies. We hope this board considers our requests, since the project in the GSP, all the projects in the GSP are funded through the fees and not the penalties. We believe that our requests are reasonable and would not stop the GSP from moving forward. We are happy to do whatever we can to work with the board and the county staff to make this happen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rob. Next. Can't be bashful.
Good morning, Christina Beckstead, Executive Director at Madera County Farm Bureau. First off, apologies for my appearance today, but we have recycling going on at the facility today. So I guess my only question today is the smoothed over rates. That's kind of news to, I think, a lot of people, as we did not see it in the packet that's posted online. And so if that was going to be discussed further, or a proposal that a little more information be provided on that tonight or today, or that it's discussed at a future meeting before authorization. Thank you.
Anyone else? Christina, would you sign in, please? Sorry. Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff Vandenheuvel with Milk Producers Council. I just wanted to make a comment on the smooth rates. I actually, think that there's some value in that, and probably part of the value is when our dairies are hopefully long-term here in Madera County, and so we're looking at the first 5 years. But But if you finish at 246 versus finishing at 329, it does give you an opportunity to, relook at this thing in 5 years, where the whole world could be a whole lot different in 5 years. So it gives you a lower baseline. So I think there's some wisdom too, and just, since the way the 218 rules are written, you take that 5th year and then you can roll it over without another 218. So having that 5th year at 246 versus 329, at least for Darrow Subbasin, I think, there's some value there to consider as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. If nobody else is going to get to speak, we'll close the public hearing. Oh, no, is there anybody on the web that's got, I'm sorry, on the web? Hey, we got Latisa from the LCJA first.
Everyone, good morning, and good morning, supervisors. I want to start by saying that our understanding from previous meetings was that the board leaned towards a hybrid volumetric rate, acre-based rate allocations because it would be more fair to small sustainable farmers, and it would also incentivize overpumpers to use less water so that demand reduction can be achieved and Madera County can reach sustainability by 2040. Now it kind of feels like Madera County is turning its back on those farmers who requested volumetric rates. Acre-based rates would disproportionately impact small sustainable farmers by charging them the same fee per acre as their large-scale unsustainable counterparts. Volumetric rates just seem more fair. If you use less water, you don't have to pay as much. This incentivizes those responsible for the overdraft to use less water. And it also seems like Madera County is turning its back on residents whose wells have gone dry as a result of farmers who practice overpumping. Acre rates would not disincentivize this unsustainable behavior in the way we need it in order to avoid disastrous impacts on drinking water in the region. Adding another acre-based fee just doesn't seem like it would change the status quo. We really believe Madera County must choose some sort of volumetric rate that will disincentivize continuation of unsustainable water-intensive farming in Madera County and create a shift to more sustainable agriculture so that the sub-basin can comply with SGMA and reach sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack Rice.
Good morning. Thank you. Jack Rice with the Madera Ag Water Association. Just a couple of comments. Thanks for the presentation and the opportunity to look at the fees again. The main thing is just providing some clarity to farmers about fees, kind of what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. This same thing applies to the allocation exceedances, the penalties and rates. It's a little confusing. I know that those of us that have had an opportunity to discuss it several times are understanding that distinction. But when this gets sent to the broader community, could be a challenge to explain. So just trying to work these important issues as quickly as we can. We know that it's procedurally necessary that we go take this stepwise approach, but we also have to deal with the reality that we need to let farmers know, what's going to happen, particularly what's going to happen this year. Irrigation has started, and it's going to be a challenging year for agriculture. So we would like to encourage you to take whatever steps are necessary to really reduce this uncertainty. Also, another comment, support the annual review of the finances and adjusting fees as appropriate. GSP rates are very different than what we've seen in water districts where there's a long history of knowing pretty closely what is needed and what it costs to provide various services. These are very prospective and predictive, and this is going to make that annual review and adjustment really important. Now, that again, you don't want to have too much uncertainty there, but it does need to be real. And I mention that because this really goes back to if the fees are adopted, what's going to happen this year? If there is that kind of annual review, letting people know what is actually going to happen this year. Finally, on smooth rates, they definitely offer certain benefits. But as Ms. Beckstead indicated, this is new. We didn't see that slide before, and so there hasn't been a lot of discussion on what that option would look like at those levels. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Any other websites, people? Any other from the public? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and we'll bring it back to the board. Okay, Supervisor Rogers.
Yeah, I just have some comments, and maybe Stephanie can give us some input on this along the way here. I'm in total agreement with the letter we received from the dairyman, and I think that many of these requests are very, very reasonable and should be incorporated into our plan. Can you take on each one of those individually? There's only 6. And give us your thoughts.
Sure. So I think we don't have any issues, obviously, helping find grants, starting with the last item, and that was for nutrient management. I would just suggest that the dairymen choose a representative to meet with me and Tristan to make sure we're really clear on what they're looking for, whether that's digesters or something else. In terms of a yearly accounting or like an annual report on the budget, as well as an annual review of the budget, those seem like completely in keeping with our thoughts on this and good fiscal management, so I don't have any issues there. In terms of penalties suspended, the penalties, and I think this was items 3, 4, and 5, are really both connected and separate from the rate study, and I think would need to come back to your board for a separate discussion on how best to implement those. So those are my immediate thoughts.
Right, and I think that even though it's not on the agenda today, I think it's important that we address those concerns as we approach that subject, and I think it's a reasonable ask considering we're talking about something brand new. Generally speaking, that's done no matter what agency is handling a circumstance of regulation. I know the state has even set that precedent in some areas. So I think that it's very reasonable to consider that the first year and a ramping up so that we're not unduly impacting somebody without them being aware and then wanting to adjust as well.
And just so we're really explicit, there is a lag time built into this anyway. So if we're talking about a penalty for 2022 water use, that wouldn't be assessed until fall of 2023.
Right.
So in effect, there is a lag time already.
Right, and I think looking at it in that regard and maybe a little bit further will help ease the burden of this transition for everybody. So I think those are great concerns. And I just want to say that the county, we look at those who are working in this county and doing the job of farming and the job of providing jobs. There's hundreds and thousands of jobs in this county because of farming operations, because of people who've taken the risk in their life to go into business, to invest their life savings, their family fortunes, and their dependency on their success. It's a risk, and it always has been. But the risk is becoming greater. And I want to just say to them, thank you for what you do. We will not turn our back on you. And we're working with you. And I can say from my standpoint, I've had meetings recently with multiple persons who are self-employed in business, farming operations. My back was always away from them. My head was pointed toward them. My ears were open, and my heart definitely in their direction. And my arms are around this community. So I'm really insulted by any thought that we're turning our back on anyone. We care about our people. We care about the employees of this county. And I've said many times, and I'll say it again, we value the people who serve the people we value. That's the way I feel about the county. Thank you.
Supervisor Poitras.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'd just like to bring some perspective and context to what we're talking about here today and remind us, everybody in the room, why we're even here today. And that's because our aquifer is getting depleted. I mean, it's not a, everybody knows that. You've had to drill new wells, put in more powerful pumps, water quality is being compromised, salts, boron, you name it, we're pumping out of the ground. And it's ugly. It's not good. I'm there. I witnessed it. I've had to pay for that, and it's not a situation where we are looking at specific industries and saying this is wrong and so forth. We're looking at everything across the board and how do we replenish our aquifer and bring things back into compliance, because things cannot continue the way they are. It's a spiraling vortex.
It won't correct itself.
Right. And we need to step up and do something. So when we look at these suggested or these proposed fees, it's for projects. When we're looking at penalties, we're talking about penalties. It's about how do we keep people from over pumping beyond what their allocation is. I know there's a number of us who have already made adjustments on our farm units in the wide area to comply within the allocations. In 2021, EuroWatch was started so that people could start watching, and it was on a trial basis and see where they were in terms of evapotranspiration. And then we received reports in January to show what they were. And I think everybody in the room that's a grower probably received something like this. This is the one I received, and it showed that I was quite a bit over on my parcel. It shows that I used probably 186. It was about 136 acre feet over on an evapotranspiration rate that I probably should have used, and accordingly we made those adjustments this year because that's complying with Sigma. It's complying with our allocation, which everybody received information on, or what that would be this year. And I know there's a lot of growers that did that. So again, this is not a surprise. This is something that has been talked about going on for a long, long time, and it's all about pumping within your allocation, because to do otherwise, it's going to, number one, penalize people who are complying, and number two, it's going to continue to exhaust our basin that doesn't have anything to exhaust. So that's really, what it comes down to, again, to provide some perspective and as far as why we're even here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. That's very good explanation. Okay, I called it a public hearing. It really wasn't. It's a public comment on our public session on the GSA report. Well, what we need now, board, is to make a motion to provide the direction that we want Stephanie and the crew to go for the Groundwater Sustainability Agency's rate study.
One quick question.
Okay.
A public member asked me to ask this, and I forgot. What will be the amount of money that will be collected in the first year in fees, if it's based on what's shown?
With the increasing rate, I think it was around $20 million.
20 million.
It would be more with
with the flat fees,
with the leveled
Level,
rate,
yeah,
right?
level
Because
rate.
the rates are higher initially.
right? Be,
Okay?
be more like 25 million.
Take two. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reemphasize what you said, that any vote is only related to direction to staff and your consultants and is not a final rate study vote.
Right.
And I'd just like to emphasize there's copies of the presentation and the rates, including this one, are on the MaderaCountyWater.com under GSA rates and up front as well.
Oh, we got some up there, okay. So what's your pleasure, board?
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that we move forward with the plan that has been presented to us for further review and finalization for a vote with the flat rate option over 5 years.
And that'd be,
I'll
the
second.
next deal would be on April 12th.
Is that a motion or just we can do consensus? Is consensus okay?
A motion is also fine, or consensus, but again, if you take a motion and you vote, it's only for direction and not on the actual rate.
Right.
Right.
And the
Because I would like to-
And the
We got a
CAO
first and a
also
second.
wanted me to say that, go ahead, Gee, I'm sorry.
Although we're doing agenda review after this meeting closes, your next meeting is on the 5th, followed by the 12th, and then the 19th. So I didn't know if that was pertinent relative to the deadlines that we face for the 218 study.
Okay, so that was my question, so, or part of my question. So in regards to, this wouldn't be voting to set this rate, it would be to provide the direction so that it can give some time, since those smoothing rates weren't in the presentation, but as part of the backup, it would give some time to kind of digest those before they actually come for a vote.
Yeah, I would like to bring the rate study to you on the 12th, which would have the smooth rates in it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that there was that time to actually see that. I just
Want to give us any comment?
Yeah, I think it's important that we give the public time to comment on that. And I appreciated the thought behind it as well, that Supervisor Poitras put into that, because that's a component that I wasn't really thinking about, and it's just totally logical. Mathematically, it makes sense. You don't go up when you're going down. You don't go up on the rate when you're going down. And then also, I'd like for us to consider the letter that's been presented and the thoughts in that as well.
I think what Stephanie had said was that would have to be taken care of under any ordinance regarding fees, correct?
Fees, yeah.
Yes, I think we can act on some of the letter. We can start looking for grants now and meet with the dairymen, and we can include an annual review and annual accounting items 1 and 2 in the letter. Not a big deal. That's.
Yeah, there was one.
My vote is going to be yes. My daughter's just getting out of surgery. I'm going to.
Yeah, go ahead, Brett. There was one item we didn't address, and that was item 5 on the letter allowing farms to cross sub-basin boundaries in one farm unit.
Yeah, and there are a number of examples there, and we probably need a separate process set up with the board. So I
Okay.
will need to work with Mike on that one.
Okay, good. I'd like to see us address all of those in the
It's in, and we got it in the.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Okay, roll call, please.
Is it a motion or?
I second it.
Okay, good.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier was yes. Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Chairman Wheeler?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Supervisor Frazier's vote should be absent unless he,
He voted before he left?
not before the call of the vote.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absent, 4-0.
Yeah, just to make it clear, Supervisor Frazier's daughter is being operated on.
Right.
And that's why he left the meeting. I don't think everybody probably heard that. So it's important that you know that. And our thoughts and prayers are with her and him. Thank you.
And we thank everyone for coming today, and then our next deal will be on April the 12th. And if
Yes.
you got any input you want to give Stephanie or us, please feel welcome to. And we'll move on to adjourning this meeting, and thank everybody so much.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
We gotta keep an eye on it.
Bye, David. Thank you.